Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Joey G. What's going on? Here today to let you know who the 5 greatest wrestlers of all time are. Well, my 5, but who I think the 5 greatest are, and I'm gonna, get to it real quick. Rest in peace to China, Prince, and death comes in threes. So I don't know who that. That's a horrible thing to say. That's not a horrible thing to say, but it's a reality thing to say. Death does come in threes, and well, in wrestling, you had Piper, Dusty Rhodes, and Dusty Rhodes wasn't even a year ago, just about a year, and then Piper and China. So yeah, that was 3. Can't believe Roddy Piper's dead. Man, that's one of my favorite wrestlers. He's not in my top 5, but he's there. But at number 5 is Scott Hall. Yeah, no doubt. Scott's the man. I was just listening to his Stone Cold podcast, I was thinking about doing this Fab 5 show. This is part 1, too, because I'm probably not going to get all 5 in. It's actually 6. There's 2 tied for number 1. You probably know who that is, the people that know me. But Scott Hall, just a great worker, a guy that can make somebody look great. A little bit about Scott that I like. He's just a sarcastic mother effer. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying not to curse. He keeps it real. He's just a great, just to put guys over. He was like the Tito's in WWF when he was doing the Razor thing. He was like the Tito Santana of the mid card. I mean, he was just the man. I mean, he could work, he could sell, he could put people over. And just outside the ring, he's just a cool ass dude. You know what I mean? I mean, he started out with Dusty Rhodes in Florida. And he was back and forth, and he was in the AWA with Kurt Hennig. And, that's where he met Shawn Michaels. And that's really how the clique started. You know what I mean? He met Shawn, and, they were friends then. And he's friends with Marty. He was friends with Kurt. They all hung out. You know what I mean? Jerry Lawler was up there then. He was there. Larry Zbyszko, who Scott Hall's still personal friends with. And it went on and on and on. Then, of course, he went to WCW where he got that break as the Diamond Stud. And I like the Diamond Stud. Personally, I used to like that gimmick. I used to be like, why doesn't he talk, though? I mean, he did the toothpick thing. If everybody remembers it, you go back to late 1990, and go, 91, you see him, do the toothpick. And then it was around, I guess, 92. I think his last, I remember seeing him like early 92 as a Diamond Stud. And the Razor Ramon, vignette started, and I was like, that's a Diamond Stud. You know what I mean? And he was cool. I mean, he was that, Tony Montana, that Scarface, you know what I mean? Just like something happened to this Gold Chico, something gonna happen to you. This is Reza Ramon. Say hello to the bad guy. Hola, mi chico. Hola, mi. I used to do that shit with my boy Paul Springer. What's up, Springer, if you're watching it? We used to crack up with that shit in Northeast High School in like 10th grade. But, that's a little reminiscent, but whatever. And it was just, his feuds were great. I mean, in WWE. I mean, I'll get to his WCW second stint in a second, with that. But when he became the Intercontinental Champion, and, it came down to him and Rick Martel in that Battle Royal on Raw, and they fed. And then, he's a 4-time Intercontinental Champion. I mean, he was mid-card. Personally, I think Razor Ramon, Vince could have made a cash cow at Razor Ramon. He could have made him the WWE World Champion, WWF World Champion at that time, WWF Champion. He could have. I mean, Scott is a great worker. I mean, knows the business. I mean, at that time, he was with the clique, and they were, a big pain in the ass in the locker room. I don't know. You know what I mean? I like a lot of them guys, and a lot of them, if I was there, you know what I mean? They wouldn't have been bullying me around. You know what I mean? If anything, I would have been in the clique. You know what I mean? Because I love and had the passion of business that Scott Hall does. I mean, you can just listen to Scott Hall, and that's one of the reasons he's my, my fifth, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. I mean, he just love and his passion for the business. And I think that's what a lot in WWF, at WWE now, that's why the clique was so hated, that they had such passion for the business, especially Scott Hall. He has such passion. He knows what works, what doesn't work. I mean, he just knows, you know what I mean? And with him going to WCW, Vince just had his head up his ass. I mean, Vince didn't know, Vince was losing. I mean, how do you already let all these other guys go? They got a show on, and then, you're going to let 2 of your youngest start from the new generation go? You're going to let Diesel and Razor go? You know what I mean? And they're best friends, you know what I mean? They're in the clique together, you know what I mean? And it was just, and finally the last night, you know what I mean, there in the garden, before the curtain call, Vince says to Scott, you know, how much they making you there? How much they giving you down there? Because Vince never discussed it with him. And Scott told him, and Vince said, whoa, that's a money. You know, he said, you know, I thought, you know, we were all family. Same thing he said to Kevin Nash. You know what I mean? But, you know, Scott said, you know, you give me, you know, what you know, you match their offer. Same thing Nash said to him. I'll stay. You know, he said that Tracy Chapman song. Give me one reason to stay here, and I'll turn right back around. He didn't want to leave. He felt like he was selling out. Remember in the garden before the curtain call, after he jobbed the Hunter, and which I thought was stupid. I remember reading in the back of the Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazines, you know, how they tell, you know, where the arenas, and every card would say, Razor Ramon pinned by Hunter Hearst Helmsley. And at that time, I used to think Hunter Hearst Helmsley was like a jobber. And I was like, what are they having him lose to this dude for? You know what I mean? Like, I knew he was in the clique and everything. I knew they were all cool. I mean, that was all on the dirt sheets and everything, the PWI torch and whatever. And the PWI Insider, whatever. But I was like, why are they having Razor lose to him like this? And then I found out, you know, he was leaving. You know what I mean? And then they had that show here in Philly on Saturday night. Yeah, on Saturday night they had it in Philly, and then Sunday they had it in the Garden, the curtain call. Because that Saturday night I remember, because I had friends that went to that show. It was Diesel versus Shawn in the cage. Razor was fighting Hunter, and it was at the Wells Fargo Center. Well, the Wachovia Center, First Union Center. It's the Wells Fargo now. But yeah, I remember that. Yeah, they didn't have then the next night they had the curtain call at the Garden. But they came here first in Philly. But yeah, Scott Hall is great. Right? He got the NWO. You know what I mean? They like he said, he didn't know it was going to happen. You know, I'm wrapping this whole show so far is about Scott. But I mean, I love Scott. I mean, he's the man. I mean, he slipped up a couple times with his rehab. You know, Jake, you know, and DDP got him clean. And you know, I'm not a big DDP fan. I'm not. I love Jake. Jake's the man. Jake's one of my favorites. You know what I mean? He's not my top 5, but he's one of my favorites. I mean, he's got the creative mind like Joey G got the creative mind. He knows what works, what doesn't work, like Scott does. But anyway, Scott, you know, Saturday, a great run in WCW. Dude, I mean, in WCW, world champion, I don't know. That time, I think he was past his prime. I think he would have been better off staying as Razor in WWE. I think even Vince even wanted. He didn't, you know, he wanted Diesel, Kevin Nash to stay. He didn't really want to lose Razor. He didn't want to lose Scott. Scott was that mid-card. Scott didn't mind losing. Scott didn't mind doing a job as long as you paid Scott. That's why Scott loved the business. He loved getting guys over. Win or lose, he didn't even mind having the belt. You know what I mean? I think in WWF, he should have, at that time, they should have had a world title run. You know, he should have been WWF World Champion, no doubt about it. His WCW days with the NWO, he just fit in great. I mean, the NWO, the first NWO was the best. That was the best NWO, the Wolfpack. I mean, the first, not Hogan, Nash, and Hall. That was, they added too many members. I mean, bringing X-Pac in, Sean Waltman, one of my other favorite wrestlers, you know what I mean? But that was cool. Vince just let him go. I mean, I heard Vince just said to him, how much them sons of a bitches are offering you down there, or something like that, or how much, about Ted Turner, how much is that billionaire mother effer offering you? And whatever was said, you know, and he said, just go. He just let Waltman go. But Waltman was working with a lot of injuries then. He wasn't doing nothing. He was working pre-shows with Mark Merrow. They were pushing Mark Merrow, and they were making the kid job. But, you know, Scott's just the man. You know what I mean? He's the man. He went through a lot of downfalls in life, made a lot of asses out of himself. But, I mean, Scott Hall, to me, I mean, I've always liked Scott. You know what I mean? Like, what did he say that one time at the end of 97 or 98? 1997 wasn't my year, but 1998 wasn't my year, but 1999 is going to be the year of the bad guy, or the year of Scott Hall. 1999 ended up sucking for WCW. Scott was around a lot that year, though. But, you know, I just like Scott Hall. Great wrestler. Great, you know what I mean? I don't know about great dude. He was a dick to a lot of people. You know what I mean? A lot of drug problems. But, you know, who hasn't been there? You know, Scott is just the fuse, you know, he had going back to when he was Big Scott Hall in the NWA, when he tagged with Kurt Hennig, to all the way up to where he tagged with Kevin Nash. I mean, to when he had his matches with 1-2-3 Kid, when the Kid beat him at the, you know, in Raw in May of '93. You know what I mean? That's how he got the one that, Scott Hall made Sean Waltman. He did, single-handedly. You know, he liked the Kid. He saw the Kid had potential, He made him. Scott Hall made him. He made him a household. He made, the 1, 2, 3 Kid. If you still that name, the 1, 2, 3 Kid still's a household name. The 1, 2, not X-Pac, not 6, the 1, 2, 3 Kid. For dudes, women, whatever, wrestling fans that are 30, 40 years old, you know what I mean? They, 1, 2, 3 Kid, they remember. And they remember 6. They remember X-Pac. You know what I mean? Scott Hall's, definitely my 5th favorite wrestler, one of my favorites of all time. Scott Hall for life. Hey, yo. And of course, number 4, you know what I mean, is The Rock. There's no doubt about it. Needn't I say much more about The Rock? There isn't that much to say about The Rock. I mean, it's just The Rock's the man. I mean, yeah, he came out in the beginning. He started his career training, with his dad. Said, if you don't train me, I'll have somebody else who will. You know what I mean? I'll get somebody who will. And The Rock started training, and he trained in Stanford. He lived in Stanford. He trained at WWE headquarters. He trained, he came out. He looked corny, the 96 Survivor Series. I remember seeing him coming out. And I remember he won. He was a sole survivor. And I wasn't that big on him. I was like, this dude looks corny. I mean, his hair was all over the place. I just didn't like him. I didn't like him. I didn't like him. And then he beat Triple H for the Intercontinental. Fast forward a little bit, he won the Intercontinental title. And he was and you heard the Rocky die. I went to a house show one time at the Wells, whatever it was called then, the First Union Center, the Core State Center, and he was the face, and he was fighting Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and Hunter Hearst Helmsley was getting cheered. You know what I mean? And the Rocky die chant. I was right there at the house show. Die Rocky die Rocky die. But then he joined the Nation, and then they gave him the mic, and then he became The Rock, and then he was great, and then I still kind of thought but then by 98. Summer of 98, beginning, he got cool. They kicked Farouk out of the Nation. He got The Rock he got on, and he just killed it with them mic skills. I mean, there's not much you can say why The Rock's one of your favorite wrestlers. I mean, just look at the dude. He is great. I mean, he's the great one. He's The Rock. He's the most electrifying. I mean, and there's matches with Mick Foley. I mean, just great matches, works of art. I mean, the Royal Rumble, 1999, bashing Mick Foley's friggin' skull. And I mean, I still think to this day Mick Foley hasn't recovered. I mean, still to this day, watching them things. I mean, remember Mick Foley's kids in the crowd and his wife crying. You know what I mean? Just The Rock, I mean, and just the way the people turned him, the people, even when he was a heel, even when he went to being a face, his first turn as a face. I mean, going back to 98. I mean, he fought that match with Triple H at SummerSlam, and if you remember, in the Garden, they liked him. When he slammed Triple H on the ladder, he did the people's elbow. The crowd cheered him. You know what I mean? He lost. You know what I mean? And then the people just basically turned. And the next night on Raw, you know what I mean? He was saying The Rock saw the light, and then he was like, I'm the people's champion. You know? And then he was the people. Then he did the good swerve at Survivor Series, which they should do with Roman Reigns. You know what I mean? Because that's who, remember Vince said, this is my champion. And The Rock was. And you kind of knew, I remember thinking that back then, this guy should, Austin's the guy, man. You can't just take that away from Austin. You know what I mean? This is 98. I mean, he just started on top. You can't just take it away from him. Even though The Rock's getting hot, you know what I mean? And I kept thinking to myself, this guy would be the perfect corporate guy. Not thinking this would happen at Survivor Series 98, Deadly Game. Great pay-per-view. I think one of the greatest WWF pay-per-views of all time. In the top 10. What do you call it? Deadly Game, Survivor Series 98. You never saw it, check it out on the network. But that's The Rock's first title win. It's just great. And, then after on, he goes on. He was a heel. He main event at WrestleMania in Philadelphia against Austin. I went to it, and I cheered The Rock. You know what I mean? I like The Rock. I mean, I like Austin. You know what I mean? He's not one of my all-time favorites. I like Austin, though. I like the dude. I like him better. I'll be honest with you. I like him better as a Hollywood blonde. I like Brian Pillman. I mean, he's up in my, that's another story. But the Hollywood blondes, that's where I like Steve Austin. That's my favorite Steve Austin. You know what I mean? The Steve Austin from the Dangerous Alliance. No, I'm just a different cat. You know what I mean? But, I mean, I love Stone Cold. Don't get me wrong. But The Rock, I mean, his matches, all 3 of his matches at WrestleMania. The one I saw wasn't his greatest. I think the greatest match The Rock Stone Cold ever had was WrestleMania 19, where The Rock finally got the victory. But more on this one, part 2. I still got my last 3. The Rock was number 4. I still got more on The Rock. And my last final 3 wrestlers in Joey G's Fab 5. All right, this is Joey G, and I'm out. You know what I'm saying? And God bless everybody. Peace. Rest in peace, China.